Hey, Scott and Tim, good morning to you. And really enjoyed our time last night on the call, and your words really mean a lot to me. Or friendship. Um, I said I would put together just call it or put together a Zoom regarding an idea that I'll be sharing tomorrow at church, and it really I think it fits not as a particular topic, although I guess it could, but it's more of a it's more of a way of thinking about as we are being transformed, our transformational journey. It's a piece of that, and I think as I think about what you guys were talking last night, I think men in their 30s moving into 40s are thinking in terms of I need more information, I need more topics, I need to learn how to do this and this and this. And there is some truth to that. However, I think the major step in the transformative process for human beings is learning how to let go and through trust. And it has hundreds or thousands of different faces of what that looks like and occasions in our life. And I think when I talk about when we talk about going deeper, I think in that realm, how to let go, what does the cross experience look like in and through my life, and in and through the life of those other guys standing or sitting around in the room talking. What does that look like? And of course, and you and I, Scott, we've talked a lot about with every death, there's a resurrection. This happens to be my belief, and I believe that through faith. So this particular topic, I know this does not mean anything to you, Eremos Place, but it's part of a series we're doing, Walking with Jesus. It's for the adult education. It's one of the classes, and we're on a major theme in our church about discipleship. With what does it mean to be a Christ follower? So I'm at the 9 o'clock hour doing this series, and what I'm using is a video series by a guy by the name of Matt Hagan or Reagan, and he's visiting various sites in Israel, and then he pulls the Bible out and talks about the significance of those sites. I think both of you guys have been to Israel, if I recall. But anyway, this particular one is about the Eremos Place, which is a place of quietness, a place that we can put ourselves into to hear. We call it centering, we call it the devotional, we call it the quiet time. It's a time out during the day that we discipline ourselves into as far as putting ourselves in a place to hear. Now, a lot of people look at this as a duty, and I think it's really common. I did for years, but it's really a place where we can put ourselves to discern what is really true, and that's what this little presentation is going to show. This little talk that I'm going to give tomorrow, it shows the why behind an Eremos Place, why we need to put ourselves in a place to hear. So just bear with me as we do that here. So kind of back these out. So here's our first slide, and tomorrow morning we'll go over we go over the rules every week. Got to wear your name tag and all that, and then where we visited, I'll do a slight review. We've gone to other places. We've gone to Nazareth, Capernaum, and that was the whole thing of Jesus. There was a time for him to move from as a young man into his ministry, a time to move. And we talked all about that. Lower Jordan, that would have been the place of Jesus's baptism. And, behold, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. We talked about the importance of identity and power flowing out of who we are. Eastern Galilee, where Jesus, the text where he says, let's get into the boat and go to the other side. The whole idea of moving into realms that are outside of our comfort. And that's really about this idea of crossing over. We talked, let's see, that would have been 2 weeks ago. Then last week we went to Engedi. We talked about the period of time in our lives when there's an apparent promise, something we think is promised, and years and years of living without that promise, this in between what we believe is to be true about us and the lack of apparent fulfillment of what that looks like. And that's what we talked about last week. So this week we're going to go to Eremos Place. I'm not going to play the video. It's like 7 minutes and it's too long. And he just talks about this secret place, not sacred, but secret place where Jesus went. Even Jesus had to have a timeout. Here, his text that he'll be using is Mark 1:35. And so here it is. In the morning, while it was dark, Jesus got up, left the house, went away to a secluded place. That's an Eremos place right there in Greek. And that's what he's launching from. So in our story, I'll do this and I'll get to the slide. Matt, the speaker in the video, he's visiting the Garden of Gethsemane. Okay, and then I cite where this is located, across the Kidron Valley, right across from the eastern wall of Jerusalem. And but yet Matt, in his opening comments, he uses Mark 35, which we've looked at, and then I just clarify it there. Having been there and all that. He uses Mark 1:35, which includes the word Eremos right there. But even though Mark 1, the Eremos location was not Gethsemane, it was in Galilee, it was north. I just wanted to clarify to people, it's not about the exact geographic location, it's about the type of place. A secluded place is what we're talking about. So Eremos means alone, secluded. It's a desert place. I'll talk about that just briefly there. And then I think of Hosea 2:14, where it talks about the wayward Israel, the wayward bride in Hosea 2:14. That's what the whole book's about. And how God, through his tender mercies, is drawing this nation of Israel out into the wilderness. And he says, in this place, I will speak tenderly. Notice this is amazing. No, tenderly to her there. So Israel is going to be drawn there. Israel is not hearing correctly. They are self-absorbed in their own sacrificial system, their own religiosity. And Jesus and God is saying to them, you need to be allured away in order to listen to what is, what is actually true. I like to think in the term Eremos as a place, the desert as a place free of distraction. It's a place that is unencumbered with white noise. It's a place that eliminates the voices that are about. It's a place quiet that that is a place where not guaranteed that I will hear, but at least it's a place that's not tugging on me. And it could be a number of different things. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And it's within this type of setting that you and I and every person we're able to hear if we put ourselves into this kind of place. So and here's the reason why. It is one's ability to hear which determines one's capacity, ability, and capacity to receive. If I am able to hear, then I have the capacity to receive. And that receiving is to experience what Jesus is offering in the here and now. That's how I look at it. So, ability to hear gives me the capacity to receive. I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you can relate to this, that there are times that I have capacity and there are times that I don't have capacity. And this would be a great time for you guys in your group. What does capacity look like? What does it feel like? How do I receive it? How do I work within that? A way of saying it, short on patience, or deep with patience, that kind of thing. I believe the Spirit of God gives us this capacity. It often demonstrates itself in love and compassion. Jesus said he was moved with compassion. I think that's what he's talking about here. And we're not always in that space, but but we can work out of that space if we learn to listen. This Eremos. So let's go there. So here's the idea, and this is what I'm doing. I'll talk like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, and then we go to the idea, and then from the idea we have table time and we discuss the idea. So here's the idea of Eremos. And this is really the slide I wanted to show you guys. So from my perspective, this is how I see it, the why behind doing this. Think of a plumb line, the yellow dotted line, a plumb line. The plumb line represents what truly exists. It is zero. It's a 0 point. If it's at 1 degree, it is not plumb. It is, and that's why it's punctuated with this idea of what truly is. Now, I know from John's gospel, Jesus only does what he sees the Father doing, and what he references his words and his actions from what the Father is doing, always. And when he talks about the Father, he uses words like truly or true. He's talking about the Father as demonstrating what is actually true. You've heard of kingdom. That is the kingdom. So when Jesus talks about the kingdom, I think he's talking about what actually exists. Now, it's in my head that you and I, because we're human and we live in a world with many, many voices, we tend to get skewed regarding our perception of what truly is. So when Jesus speaks, he speaks and he demonstrates 24/7 what actually exists. I think my propensity is to get skewed from that, where I tend to yield to the many voices. I'm going to demonstrate this here in a minute. Now, what makes this even more real is that transposed actually as an undergirding over this idea of what is true is the given culture in any time and place represented by the grid. The New Testament grid, which, the time of the first century, these people, their grid of understanding was they were a where's God kind of people. They had been given a promise, certainly in that in-between period. They had not these people, but 400 years earlier, they had experienced destruction and the diaspora. 10 and a half of the tribes don't even exist anymore. It's just Judah and partial Benjamin, I believe, at this time. So they've gone through devastation after devastation as people who were promised something from God and they just haven't experienced it. And they're wondering what is going on. They've been under dominant foreign rule now for 400 plus years, currently under Roman rule, a temple built by a Roman pagan king, King Herod. The social structure is the men are dominant, the women are, in a sense, a step down, let alone the Samaritans and these other people that existed. So they're very hierarchical in their thinking. They believe the world is flat. They believe that heaven exists in a dome above the world. This is where they're coming from. And this is their grid of understanding during the time of when this was spoken. And so that's how they see it. Now, we fast forward to the year 2023, and our grid is a bit different. Now, the way I illustrated it, it shows it's additive. It's actually more complex. It's a more complex grid. You know, I no longer believe the world is flat. I hold in my hand, you know, through my cell phone, more information at my fingertips than these people in a collective sense, the whole nation of Israel, probably in a lifetime, of what is actually accessible. These two very minor changes really, I view things totally different, but this is why we as Christ followers have opportunity to engage into and to be able to discern through hearing what the mind of Christ is at any given time in any given situation. Far different than looking into a book for a set of rules to follow. Way different than that. Looking at the person of Jesus who models what God is like. These types of things, and applying wisdom within this discernment in order to make good decision. And well, first of all, we got to see what is true versus what I've manufactured in my head, and then to live in a community where we can talk about this and dialogue and so forth. So these are just, I'm just throwing out ideas here, guys, of how this kind of thing can be utilized. So you got the plumb line, you've got the what is true, and you've got the grid. Now, this grid is not static. This grid has voice. This grid is constantly speaking in numerous ways to you and I, and it's got voice, it's got movement, and it's dramatically influencing how you and I think, how everybody. Here's the animation of these little, I call them grid speakers. And these grid speakers are out there, and they're each representing a portion of the grid. And as they speak, I tend to get fuzzy and foggy on what is true. The what is true is now not in center, in alignment with what truly is. I'm being pulled apart. I'm being influenced. And of course, we know this just in reality is two people observing the same thing or in conflict with each other. There is this point and there is this point, and they think their point is the point. Well, it's a piece of it, but it's because we have been skewed by our own influences and biases and so forth that we no longer are at a point that we're seeing what truly is. And this is the human condition. This is where we are at on a daily basis. Many times a day, we just feel torn, and this is part of our reality. So, outcome of this is I've got these little things called grid speakers. And the truth is that grid speakers representing a piece of the grid, this may be work, This may be my biases. This may be my peers. This may be my family. But all of it's not bad. It's the way it is. It's part of the grid. It's part of when we exist in time. And these things tend to work together and create really, really complex, skewed ways of thinking in our heads. And these speakers, they do one of two things. They either push us away and make us resistant. It feels like resistance, or they pull us towards, which is probably what we would call undesirable, unhealthy kinds of choices that we're drawn into. Like one would be self-pity. That self-pity is just, or a victim. I'm being pulled to being a victim, and I assume the role of victim. Whatever it is, and this is our struggle, our common struggle, actually opportunity as human beings. And I'm going to erase all those little white things there. And then we're going to go on. So where the value of the Eremos Place is, we go to a place free of distraction, whatever that is. And I mean, we'll talk about that at our tables tomorrow. What does an Eremos Place look like? And of course, what has been your experience or non-experience with this kind of thing? And the whole idea, as a human being, I and you need times of distraction free, whatever it might be. It's not a method scientific kind of thing. I know in my earlier years, it was, well, it still is. I love the scriptures, and I love to meditate and chew on it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It can be a number of different things that draws me into a place of solace where I can hear. Now, one other thing I'm going to say tomorrow is, because I'm talking to Christ followers, we tend to take this idea and we lawify it. We make it a rule. Have you had your quiet time? Well, I believe we need to have a quiet time, but the point is, we don't go to Eremos Place to make God like us better. No one would say this, especially in our group. No one would say this or admit this. But the truth is, as we're trying to be Christ followers, and we place ourselves under a guilt system. If I have a quiet time, that's kind of what we called it in the early stages, then I feel good about myself. Well, I think having a quiet time is a great idea, because it puts me in a place where I can really hear. That's wonderful. But God doesn't think any differently about me. I mean, but we get that confused, and that is why we talked about last night, this whole idea. It is so hard for us as humans to be able to embrace how much God loves it. God can love me no more, and he can love me no less. The reason I go to Eremos Place is for me. I want to be able to discern correctly. I want to be able to exemplify the love, the love of Christ. I want to be able to speak out the mind of Christ. Philippians 2, which is a great verse to meditate, or section to meditate on, by the way. Philippians 2, 5 through, I think it's 11. But anyway, I'll talk about this tomorrow. This is not about getting God to like you better. This is, so far, nobody says it, but we live our lives under it. Just think about, when if I'm performing the way I think I need to perform, I feel good about myself. If I don't, then I don't feel good about myself. But does that mean God views you in a different? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do I need to? Yes. In order to live as a Christ follower. So that's it. Well, from there, let's see, we go to table time and see what do I have for questions here. I go, okay, tomorrow morning, I'll say, when you and I think about this idea of Eremos Place, which then I define desert-like, free from distraction, a place to hear, a place to return to center. Those are words we can use. What comes to mind? Then I'll just open it up like that. And then they're good at discussion. So what comes to mind? And then, what I'd like to hear tomorrow is a lot of them. We've got a good blend of older and younger, and I'd like these older people tell stories about their experience, especially for the younger people. So, and what it looks like, what it feels like, and some examples. So, anyway, how this ties in with what you guys are doing. Again, I think I said this at the beginning, but I think it's wonderful. It's a gift that's been given you. Young men trust you, and that in itself is a gift. I think curriculum is secondary. I think presence is primary. And you guys are well versed in the idea of creating safe space, vulnerability, all of these things that we've talked about literally for years. I know that if I were in my 40s, I would have loved something like that. And you guys are providing it, and that's a wonderful thing. Talk to you later. I'll send this to you, and hope it's helpful. Bye.